So now, before I introduce the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, I would like to remind our delegates that the Minister will be taking questions from the floor at approximately 12:30 after her statements. And if you do go to the mic, I'd ask you identify yourself. Your name, your province, and your organization would be wonderful, helpful for the Minister, I'm sure. We do ask that you go to the floor microphones for any of your questions so we can all hear and they can be translated. She will only be taking questions for about 15 minutes. So with that said, without further ado, I'm very pleased that the Minister could join us today, and I welcome you to the stage, Minister Bibeau. This is your water. Your water's on the floor.
Thank you. Bonjour à tous.
Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to see all of you in person instead of on screen.
Hello to farmers and other industry leaders from across the country. It's great to be together once again in person. For close to 90 years, CFA has been a strong voice for the farmers who feed Canada and the world. And that voice is needed today more than ever. Mary, a special thanks to you. It was great to see that your parents, John and Hazel, received the Order of Canada for their contributions to agriculture and our country. And it's obvious that you follow their way. CFA's conference theme certainly speaks to the challenges we have faced over the past 2 years, finding sustainable solutions in uncertain times. As we all know, it's been a very challenging time for Canadian farmers with a global pandemic as well as the drought and floods in Western Canada. In our short time together today, I want to outline our government's measures to help farmers meet these challenges. At the same time, I also want to look at the longer term. Last November, ministers of agriculture from across Canada agreed on the Guelph Statement. It is our shared vision to ensure Canada remains a world leader in innovative and sustainable agriculture and food production. As you know, my vision of sustainability includes environmental sustainability, of course, but it also includes social sustainability and economic sustainability as well. By social sustainability, I mean that we absolutely must pay attention to the human side of our industry. Labor is a major part of my mandate letter from the Prime Minister. I will work with my cabinet colleagues, along with governments and industry, to develop an agricultural labor strategy. We will address short-term pressures and advance long-term solutions for farmers and food processors. I encourage CFA to engage in this process as part of efforts to develop a national workforce strategy for the sector. It must be a team effort. International workers will remain critical for the sector. So I will continue to work hard to support the safe and timely arrival of temporary foreign workers this year and into the future. Employers also have a key role to play, including in providing a competitive work environment. Diversity also offers great opportunities. We need everybody at the table. Today, more than ever, women are taking leadership roles on farms, in science labs, and in industry and government organizations. Dans les derniers mois,
in the past few months, we have seen a first woman as president of the Canadian Dairy Commission, Jennifer Hayes, and another as Chief Veterinary Officer, Dr. Jane Ireland. They join pioneers such as Jane Alford, President for FCC, and your own President, Mary Robinson. We also have to make room for youth and other underrepresented groups. Last week, I sent a call for nominations to recruit new members within the Canadian Youth Ag Council. In the past 2 years, we have had passionate discussions on several important files, such as sustainable agriculture and public trust. This group gives young farmers an opportunity to have an influence on the policies and programs that will have a direct impact on their future in the sector, as they have done with the Agri-Communications program. Currently, we are looking to recruit 14 new youth to sit on the council. So if you're aged between 18 and 30, I would invite you to apply. We also have to put an end to the taboos. We need to put an end to the taboos that surround mental health, with the challenges that you have to face with the nature of your work, which is often solitary work. I know that sometimes you feel at the end of your rope, but I want to remind you that there are resources at your disposal if you need help. Being strong sometimes does mean seeking out help. It's important to break down these taboos about mental health.
Social element, a central pillar of sustainability, is environment. With the recent floods in British Columbia, as well as the severe droughts across Western Canada, we need to provide support quickly. And there's no doubt that we also need to double down on our efforts to improve our resilience to the effects of climate change. We know that immediate challenges remain for farmers across the West. That's why we worked with the provinces to deliver over $1 billion under Agri-Recovery and Disaster Financial Assistance to help producers suffering from the droughts and floods. Mary, I want to thank you and CFA for reaching out to your neighbors in need through the A-West initiative. I'm pleased that our government is able to provide up to $4 million to help CFA with the costs of transporting hay under the program. Il est essentiel de réagir.
It's essential for us to act as we have done when we see catastrophes, but we also must think about the long term. A sustainable environment in agriculture is everyone's business, including governments and stakeholders as well as the industry. That is what consumers are looking for here and abroad. Everywhere throughout Canada, farmers are taking care of their land and also looking at biodiversity thanks to no-till, thanks to conservation of wetlands. We are here to support you in all of these efforts, which are essential efforts in fighting climate change. In the past year, the government has launched programs for more than $500 million in order to help farmers to adopt sustainable practices and to get clean technology. This includes the second gen of Life Laboratories, which is supported by an additional $185 million contribution over 10 years. The collaborative research efforts that flow from this have already yielded interesting results throughout the country. For instance, in Manitoba, the First Nation of Swan Lake is working with researchers in order to capture and stock waters off farm and avoid the loss of nutrients. And we are also acting to reduce emissions. We have set up the On-Farm Climate Action Fund. Last week, I announced the name of 12 organizations from throughout the country that are going to be administrating this fund worth close to $182.7 million, which is going to offer incentives directly for better practices on farm with cover crops, fertilizer management, and yield rotations.
The sector takes time, resources, commitment, and ingenuity, and yes, additional resources. That's why we launched the Agricultural Clean Technology Program to help farmers and agribusinesses invest in new technologies that enhance environmental sustainability and reduce emissions. 60 projects have already been approved across Canada under the first wave of the program. Producers such as Bryce Wendland, a grain farmer from Saskatchewan, received funding to install a new high-efficiency grain dryer. And in Nova Scotia, the Buckma family was able to install new solar panels to provide power for their dairy farm. In communities across the country, we're supporting farmers for today and working together to keep our agriculture sector strong and sustainable for generations to come. We know that a healthy environment and a healthy economy go together. Agriculture is a powerful driver of our economy and our rural regions. Despite the challenges of 2021, Canadian farmers worked hard to ensure that our agricultural sector remains a strong economic engine of our country. Farmers are helping Canada to build back better. And they do that by helping Canada to remain a global leader in sustainable and innovative agriculture. That way, producers can capitalize on the new market opportunities that are opening up for sustainable food. Here at home, farmers need strong business risk management programs to keep their operations competitive and growing. I know BRM is a priority for CFA. The risk profile of Canadian agriculture has changed, and our programs need to reflect that change. We've taken an important first step by eliminating the reference margin limit from agri-stability. We are also committed to restoring the compensation rate to 80% with the support of the provinces. At the same time, we are focused on long-term reforms to BRM. Along with provincial ministers, we are just beginning consultations for the next 5-year agricultural policy framework, which starts in 2023. Through that consultation process, we will look at longer-term changes to business risk management programs.
If we ask farmers to be responsible for helping to restart our economy, we have to offer them business risk management programs that are efficient. We also are going to be putting close to $2.7 billion to help the dairy and poultry producers to deal with the fallout from the agreements with TPP. We are also going to announce the program for processors in these sectors. And as promised, we are going to move forward with compensation that is full and equitable for the agreement signed with the U.S. and Mexico, and there will be announced this mandate.
Our sector, we know that there are major challenges to overcome first. I remain absolutely committed to restoring trade of PEI potatoes with the United States and supporting our producers. We have restored access to Puerto Rico, which is a good first step, and provided $28 million in support for diversion. At the same time, it is heartbreaking for producers having to destroy part of their hard work. We will continue to reinforce our science-based management system and work with industry to ensure the sector is resilient and that our producers thrive. Animal disease are also closely monitored. Recently, a commercial poultry farm in Nova Scotia was touched by avian flu, and we are not immune to African swine fever either. Working closely with the provinces and the industry, we continue to do everything we can to prevent the disease from entering into Canada and to be ready if it ever does. Farmers also have the responsibility to apply strong phytosanitary measures. We will also continue to address ongoing pressures on the supply chain and food availability, which is farmers' lifeline to growth and prosperity. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia is expected to put even more pressure on our supply chain and to contribute to increases in world prices for grains and oilseeds. This could lead to food insecurity issues in countries in Middle East and Africa, and even the European Union. Canada, as a net exporter of key commodity crops, could play a role in supplying these regions depending on existing stocks and demand. On another hand, we can expect the input cost to increase, including energy and fertilizers. We continue to monitor the situation very closely and work with the sector to limit the impacts on farmers. A month ago, the Minister of Transport held a supply chain summit, along with a number of key ministers and stakeholders. We had excellent discussions with some great ideas on ways to keep the supply chain moving. We are working hard with industry to address these challenges while positioning the sector for a bright future. Over the past 2 years, Canadian agricultural producers and processors have shown tremendous resiliency and adaptability in the face of severe pressures. Last year, in the middle of the pandemic, our agriculture and food exports hit a new record of over $82 billion. So we've already exceeded our target of $75 billion by 2025. That's a testament to the great work of our farmers and food processors working with the government. As I mentioned, Canada's ministers of agriculture are now beginning to shape the next 5-year policy framework of agriculture. The framework will help our farmers and agri-food processors lead the world in sustainable agriculture and keep a step ahead of the competition. I look forward to working with CFA to ensure that the next framework addresses the priorities of Canadian farmers. So thanks again to Mary and to the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We do have some time for questions, so I will invite people to come to the mic if they wish. I can't believe people won't be jumping up to ask the Minister a question. So first off, I think we've got Lynn Jacobson from Alberta Federation of Agriculture, from Alberta, obviously. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess I'm breaking the ice, right? You guys get up and ask some questions after this. One of the things I'm really happy to talk about, the sustainability and that, and some of the, the projects that are going forward. One of the things that they're talking about is especially the application part and how to get, ordinary producers part of these these programs is some of the things, and some of the issues on that is not very clear. Another thing kind of worried about too, or wondering about, is with the troubles that's happening in Ukraine and Russia right now. What is that going to do to the grain supply? Because Russia and Ukraine are basically some of the largest producers of food in the world, and you mentioned it a little bit, but what is that actually going to mean to us in Canada here? And what do we have to maybe pick up and supply in the future on this one?
Thank you. So we're definitely really committed to help as many farmers as possible to be part of this transition for an always more sustainable agriculture. And I say always more sustainable because I sincerely believe that farmers, have already, what is the most important to you is your land and your animals. So you've taken care of the environment for generations. But now with this climate crisis, we all acknowledge that we have to double down, and we know that moving faster will take resources. And first, we want to invest in research and innovation and make sure that the new knowledge and the new technologies are being shared to the greatest number and are being accessible and affordable for farmers. So this is why we are investing in different programs. So last week I announced who will be the administrators of the almost $200 million for the on-farm climate action. So this program is really to provide financial incentives to farmers who will adopt good practices such as cover cropping, rotational grazing, and better management of, I'll say fertilizer because it's easier to pronounce. And we also have the Clean Tech program to help afford energy efficient technology, grain dryer, poultry heat system, or precision agriculture. So there are also subsidies for the purchase of these equipment. On Ukraine, I hope this is not going to last, but I mean it's not going the right direction. Yes, it's obvious that Ukraine, being a big agricultural producer and exporter, it will have a significant impact. Russia as well. So I would say that my first thought, after the Ukrainian community themselves, obviously, will be for countries in developing countries who used to be supplied by Ukraine. And I know that our grain producers are already working closely with the World Food Program to supply Africa and the Middle East, because there's a real food security issue. We also know, and I think it's too early to talk about opportunities. We're talking about a war, and the other element is it will probably put more pressure on our supply chain, on the prices of inputs of fertilizer, prices and availability of certain inputs. So while there might be new clients to supply, there will probably be impacts on prices and even on the way, on the supply chain itself, the availability of containers and different things like that.
Yeah, okay. Hello, Peggy Breckfeld, Ontario Federation of Agriculture. Today you talked about the importance of environmental, social, and economic sustainability. I think all the people in this room would agree with that. That's very important. In fact, I think most of us, and you will know this, we work hard and move the dial forward to continue to grow this industry and do more things. One of the things that concerns us sometimes is that there seems to be a lot of pressure to reduce emissions, but contrasting that, there's also pressure for us to produce more food, to provide food for the world and grow that. So as we consider emissions and the agriculture industry, I'd like to suggest that part of the measurement isn't just about the number of acres and working on those numbers, but instead the conversation about the emissions compared to what we are producing. When you look at dairy, when you look at pork, they have some wonderful numbers about what they've done in producing more with less. Or if you look at it that way, in some ways their emissions stayed the same, but they're doing so much better and so much more good for the world. And I think that has to be considered as we move forward in this conversation.
Thank you. Yes, I understand also the difference between the emission itself and the intensity compared to with the production. At the end of the day, we all have, as a country and as a planet, this duty to reduce our net emission. And we are on this path for a Canada that is net zero emission by 2050 and reducing by 45% by 2030. So so we have to find, the path forward. We also have to improve our capacity to measure, because we still have work to do in terms of measurement, knowing what our baseline really is and how we can move forward. And all sector of the economy has a role to play, and we do too in agriculture. we always like to say that we are different because we're feeding the world, and it's true. But we also have to take it extremely seriously because, well, you're the first one impacted. And this is what consumers are asking as well. So we'll work together in finding, the best path forward. There are many consultations that I can't compare before this government, but I feel that we've been quite open and we've had a lot of consultation and conversation with you, and we will keep doing that, not only through the Department of Agriculture, but also through the Department of Environment. Minister Bibeau is a reasonable guy, very intelligent. He's challenging us, but in the same time, he gets it. And we'll be working together to find a reasonable path forward. But we have to be ambitious. We really have to be ambitious and to set, high targets, but we'll work together to find alternative. And earlier this week, I had a conversation with around the protein supercluster, and I was very excited to hear about innovation that could help us to reduce the emissions, in sector that I never thought of before. So we should not underestimate either our capacity to innovate, and we'll do it together. Merci.
Bonjour, Madame la Ministre. Martin Caron, de l'Union.
Mr. Martin Caron from the Union of Agricultural Producers. I have a comment and a question. My first comment, and I'm representing the whole room. I remember my first meeting here in CFA, where we asked for retribution or compensation for ecological goods, and with the announcement you've made, I think some of these demands have been met. And also in terms of business risk management, we should be able to increase that envelope generally. I think the ecological services, some of my predecessors have mentioned that it should be supported. And in terms of innovation, there are interesting things happening. We have to continue, and the budgets should be there to make sure we remain competitive in the face of the United States and Europe, where they have direct payments, and some of the latest announcements that have spoken of direct payments to the producers. I think we have to carry on along that same path. And maybe this leads to my question, Minister. I have heard your speech, but one of the things I would like to hear you expand on the food systems, agricultural systems. They're talking about a code of conduct relating to the agricultural food production system. Are there elements you can mention today, or should we wait till April? Thank you. Yes, thank you. I think we have responded to some of your expectations and recommendations with some of the latest best practices suggested for agriculture. One of the challenges we have is that it's about 200,000 families that work in that area, small businesses. So we have to find the best ways to share information and make sure that we have as much participation as possible as far as the agricultural system and the code of conduct. Minister Montagne and myself, we co-presided a committee where we give a mandate to an industry group. Our hope is that they should be able to come up with a code of conduct on a voluntary basis. But to make sure that things move ahead fast, we have provided services. There is a secretariat, there is a mediator, somebody that can help them along the way. So that will be by month end or April, so we can have an action plan with concrete measures. So there is still a month of work left. I cannot advance any answers now, but I hope we will have some concrete measures relating to the voluntary code of conduct that should answer or help to take away some of the challenges There have been issues related to the COVID also. Some of the rates were increased, the costs were increased significantly by some retailers. And with the inflation, the rising prices, there is an issue about who will absorb the shock in the food production system. That in code of conduct, the principles of collaboration could also help along those lines. Thank you.
Terramera. Minister, great to have you here. Thanks for coming, and great to hear some of your comments around how you see the role of agriculture and sustainability coming together and some of the investments you're making. You mentioned the importance of both measurement and helping support producers to take regenerative activities. One of the things that we've really seen is the difficulty of producers being able to understand what techniques they can take and how that's actually impacting soil health and their bottom line. And we had a great discussion this morning about sustainability and carbon here. And one of the key things that still continues as a need is helping producers make that link. In the U.S., the USDA announced recently, as you may know, $1 billion towards these kind of pilot projects to help bring together and support producers to take activities and measure the effects on their business and on their soil. Maybe could you comment if there's anything like that your department is considering and how you're thinking about really mobilizing this at a greater scale so that it's easier for producers to understand that linkage?
Yes, and actually it brings me back to the programs that I've talked about a little bit earlier, and also the living labs, because you're talking also about sharing the best practicing. So through the living lab initiatives, and this is I call it the second generation, we have put an additional $165 or $85 million on that to strengthen and have a greater number of living labs working across the country. So the idea behind these programs is to bring scientists in the field with producers to make sure that they are working on something that is dear to the heart of producers, and that the whole region or other producers will come and have a look and be able to appreciate the way it's being done, the impacts, so have a better understanding and be hopefully more engaged or willing to adopt these best practices. The on-farm climate initiative as well is really providing financial incentives to farmers for the adoption of better practices. The clean tech is another way to get subsidy to afford clean technology. So only last year, we have announced more than $500 million in support to farmers, directly targeting, best practices and energy-efficient technologies or technologies that would help us reduce emissions. So we are really, really in this direction. And I often say now, if I want to get more money from the Minister of Finance, I need to give GHD in exchange of money. Now the Department of Finance, I can tell you, they are working with 2 columns of number. And this is a message that I've shared with my provincial colleagues while we are discussing the next generation of the Canadian Partnership Agreement. So we're looking at various ways to support you and also invest in a significant manner in research and innovation, including measurement, to find, new practices again, and also by investing in a program such as the Clean Tech program, I believe that we are creating or stimulating a market for these good technologies. So this is also a way to motivate the industry to go faster in terms of development and commercialization of these technologies, so it will make them more affordable more quickly. So it's another way that we're trying to to help as many farmers as possible to adopt and afford these practices and technologies.
Do you have time for one more?
One more, yes.
Okay. This is
I'm
Alvin
glad.
Keenan from Prince Edward Island.
Alan's with him.
Minister Bibeau, my name is Alvin Keenan. I'm from my home is in Prince Edward Island, and I represent the here under the BEI Federation of Agriculture. Congratulations on you being the first woman Minister of Agriculture, and also the, if I understand correctly, the first Francophone, if I say this correctly, and for that it shows your stature. Madame, when Prince Edward Island has been quite vocal lately and the only way they know how, of course, is in the social media and media because of some of the situation with potatoes. And this has been ongoing. I don't really want to elaborate on how long I've been around, but it's been a while, and I was fortunate enough to grow up 6 miles from the Holton border in the little town of Woodstock. And the first thing I remember in life, of course, was potatoes. And along with that, right after Christmas, Maine farmers used to block the border on Canadian imported potatoes. And at that time, the trade was pretty well even. Potatoes entered U.S. from the East Coast, and they exited through the West Coast. And in my life, earlier in the years, the hundredweight that imported and exported was somewhat the same. It's changed now. But the situation hasn't changed when it always seems to be around when there are surpluses of potatoes in the East. And 20 years ago, potato wort was found in Prince Edward Island. At that year, it was also a huge crop, but they did find wort, and it's a quarantinable pest, and CFIA helped develop a protocol to keep it under control. And over the years, since that time, CFIA has become more distant and almost impossible to communicate with, to have them review some of the protocol that they were dealing with, and the industry desperately asked them to. And now we're in the situation where we failed. That the science didn't fail, but they got so they didn't believe their own science. Now, science doesn't lie, but it changes. We all know that. Everybody does. And as we find new information, we adjust our thought process. The science in the world today, and as farmers, we can find it how to eradicate wart. But we're not able to get this come to place. And then when they address it, they call it, they use words like infestation, and oh my soul. Then the United States, because it's more protectionist than most countries, and of course it's easy for them to suggest the border be closed. And I want you to understand, Prince Edward Island is not annoyed at you for closing the border, but they ask you to open it. And I think what they mean by that is not reverse your actions. I think what they mean by that is help us find the science so it opens. And it reminds me of being in an adjoining room and doors swing both directions from both ways. And I want to take this opportunity to ask you and thank you for your input. And you didn't build this. You didn't create this problem. You were handed this to deal with, and I'm glad you're there. And you have our support. And I encourage you to try to advise us on how to develop a dialogue so our industry can have input into CFIA's science. See, in the last number of years, and if I said 20, it's longer than that, and I said 40, it's longer than that. But since that, in that time, they have gotten out of managing quality of crops and what have you, and more into food safety. The industry has developed that in their own organizations, and the producers themselves have become tremendously informed and knowledgeable of how to ask questions and understand what's possible. And CFIA, somehow, we need to, whoever has whoever their superior is, we're having trouble to figure that out. Is it CFIA? Is it Health Canada? And the answer is it's the people, and to educate every person in Canada on the issue, that's almost impossible. But the industry people are in this room, and I ask you to not how to do that today, but to try to allow this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand how hard it is on the island right now. I mean, I understand that the potato industry is at the heart of the whole island. It's the livelihood of so many families. It is hard that the border has been closed with the Americans. I assure you that we'll continue to work as hard as possible to get the border reopened. We were able to do so for Puerto Rico to start with. It was a good first step. We're talking about table stock potatoes first, and we are very hopeful and confident that we will be able to reopen the border for the mainland for table stock potatoes, and then that would be another conversation for processing, and we have to proceed with the full investigation for seed. I get it, and we will continue to work with you closely to have CFI improve their communication. I think these scientists are very competent, but in terms of science is their strength, and communication is not necessarily their biggest strength. But seriously, we will find a solution based on science, and we're bringing additional people around the table to facilitate the communication and the understanding on both parts. And I really want to find a solution. This is the file that I've worked the most on for the last 6 years. We take it extremely seriously. My team and I at Agriculture Canada, at CFIA, and we won't let you down. We will work hard on reopening the borders, find support for the farmers who are the most affected, and find a path forward, We'll.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your statements and for answering our delegates' questions. It's so important that you're accessible to us and you stand here and open yourself up to these kinds of questions. It takes courage, and I appreciate that. So thank you for your time today.